Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and welcome to my 50 top games of all time. This list in particular is going to be numbers 50 through 41. And this is because 100 seemed like too much and 20, which is what I did last year, seemed like far too little. So, a few ground rules before we dive into this. First of all, the way I did this list is pretty simple. I categorize my games by a few simple classifications in terms of where they fall in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And so I group them all, then I completely reshuffle them and reorder them within each list to try to come as close as possible to what I think is a fair rating without sticking to whatever I had in the past. And I plan on doing that every year, which means there probably will be some inevitable shuffling because comparing game 48 to 47 is just really what my best guess was as I'm lining them up and thinking it through, and that will change because as I play games, they change. There are some games in my top 20 last year that I just haven't played in the past year, and so they've really dropped quite a bit. But in any case, to take it there, and before we get into the actual list, a fun side note is that on this list of 50 games, there are 15 games that are Kickstarter games, and none of those are in the next 10 we're about to talk about. There are 4 games that are 2020 games, and there are 12 games that are new to me in 2020, which inherently include those 4 as a side. And some of those last 2, or some of those 12, are in this list. And to start us off, number 50 on the list is going to be Circle the Wagons. I have talked about this game before. This is one of my favorite Button Shy games. I've played a few Button Shy games. There are a few more I still need to play, but currently my 2 favorite are Sprawlopolis and Circle the Wagons. And Circle the Wagons is number 50, just edging its way into this list. And yes, by the way, of course, there shall be cries of heresy when you figure out that I left off insert game X because that's number 67 and Circle the Wagons took precedence. But that is because Circle the Wagons is so easy to get to the table. This game teaches in a few minutes, plays in a few minutes. You're basically drafting cards, not typical drafting, but you set them up in a circle and then taking cards one at a time, overlaying them to build out this little puzzle. The game is so addicting in the puzzle you're creating. You have 3 different scoring objectives that will go in the middle every single time, mixing up the way and how you're trying to score the game. And then there's some common scoring variables that will be consistent game to game. And from there, it's a constant game of taking what works for you, just a hint of screwage as you force your opponent to take things that don't work for them or that get in their way or that set you up for the perfect move. Circle the Wagons is an excellent game, and that is why it's my number 50. Next up from there at 49, we have Valeria Card Kingdoms. This is my favorite from the whole space-based Machikoro, Valeria Card Kingdoms, Catan, any of those games that involve... Can I show you the back? I can show you the back. Valeria Card Kingdoms is one of those games that involve the core game mechanic is you roll dice and then take stuff because you roll dice. Not that dissimilar to Catan, but where it does diverge is, first of all, unlike Catan, this has artwork by the Miko, which is... Well, Catan doesn't have artwork by the Miko. If Catan still had artwork by the Miko, well, then it would be a best-selling international game. Never mind. Catan is a best-selling international game, and Valeria Card Kingdoms is incredible. It is, the art is gorgeous. The gameplay involves, like I said, rolling dice, then taking 2 actions. You can buy a villager that will effectively mean that when you roll more dice, you have a higher chance of getting more stuff, continuing that cycle of just getting more and more goodies. The one main critique I'd have of the game is the fact that at times in the game, you just definitely have a resource overflow going on. There's too many resources and not enough stuff, and well, too many resources and not enough actions, and so you can kind of buy whatever you want. But how and what you buy ends up being that factor, plus the domains come in nicely. Those domains are expensive, and they give you other benefits plus endgame scoring. The expansions in the game do mix things up to a decent amount, particularly I want to say Crimson Seas. I think that's the one that's the big whatever, but that adds a lot of content to the game. I don't always play with that one because it adds a lot of things to the game as well. But overall, the core of Valeria Card Kingdoms is, well, first of all, that's why I like the art of the Miko. This is my first game that had art by the Miko. But additionally, it's why I like the whole Daily Magic Valeria series in general. I like Valeria Card Kingdoms. It is simple, it is engaging, it is fun to get to the table, and that is why it's my 49. And my 48 is going to be Carson City. By the way, I neglected to mention, but Circle the Wagons is going to be one of the 12 games that is new to me in 2020. I believe I played this for the first time in 2020. And then we have Carson City, which I'm hesitant to put too much on its side because we got a whole bunch of broken token stuff going on inside here, although in theory, broken token means it should hold itself better. In any case, Carson City, designed by Xavier Georges, is an amazing game. I have the 10th edition, big box edition, whatever it is, but it has so much content that I have yet to ever fully explore, which is a shame. Why do I get all the expansions when I don't always play with them? In Valeria, I've played with every single expansion, therefore I am vindicated. I am good to go. Let's talk about Carson City. Carson City is worker placement that is competitive. It has a degree of you're exploring the Old West, you're staking your claims, and in this game, you place down your workers one at a time. Well, the first thing you do is you choose one of the 7 roles in the game, and there are a whole bunch of roles in case you want to mix up the game. And then you're going to take your workers, placing them down in various locations to either stake claims, lock yourself in on buildings, or do a whole bunch of other things such as getting guns, getting roads, getting all these other things in the game that are the core there. But the fun part of the game is your cowboys can effectively fight each other, so you can go where someone else just went and then get in a duel, and then if you lose a duel, you'll get your cowboy back. So it's not all lost there. In fact, your opponent probably had to in some way give up guns and roll the dice and whatever it is, but in the meantime, you'll get your cowboy back and you'll still be able to have a positive action the next round. There are only 4 rounds to the game, which often feels too short, but it actually works out. Comes in at a decent length, roughly 90 minutes, gives you a lot of action for that 90 minutes, a lot of escalation, a lot of building up your player board, a lot of stealing each other's resources, because you can go on their buildings, and if they don't fight you off with their cowboys, you'll take half the income of the buildings that they spent half their game developing. It is one of those games that has a kind of aggressive twist to the worker placement that can feel more punishing than it actually is. But once you get used to the core of the game, once you start feeling out how the game plays, you'll realize it's not nearly as punishing as people thought. It really does let you end up doing all the stuff you need to. And watch as I rapidly shift boxes to the side in order to pull up my 47, which is going to be Hanamikoji. Hanamikoji is one of my favorite 2-player games because it's so quick to teach, it's so easy to play, and it's a mental mind game every single time. Ultimately, the core of this game is very similar to Battle Line, although Battle Line has slowly aged out over time. Still a great game, still one I highly recommend, but over time I find Battle Line hits the table far less often, whereas Hanamikoji, I always find it a complete treat to pull this out and introduce new players to it. It basically has, you have every round, you have 4 actions you're going to take, and those actions are going to define how the entire round plays out. And at the end of the round, you check for victory, and if there's a victor, great. If not, you move to the next round. What you're effectively trying to do is you're trying to either get, I believe, if I recall correctly, 15 points worth of the cards in the middle, or alternatively, any 4 of the cards in the middle. And the problem is it's a tug of war back and forth as you try to get the various cards that will earn you a victory along those rows, and then you're trying to figure out whether you'll either win or tie, and if they tie, they stay in the middle. So sometimes this game can last a single round if you end up getting enough. Other times you'll see, oh well, I got 2 cards, you got 2 cards, no one really triggered a victory, so let's reset but leave our cards that we got out and go to the next round. So sometimes it can go on 2 rounds. In theory, it can go on forever. Fortunately, I am sitting here giving this video, which means it never actually has gone on forever. There is a whole mechanism in case it's going on too long. We've never had to utilize that. What I like about the game is that there's 4 simple actions you use to acquire cards. Every single round, you just have 4 tokens, and you have to cash them in one at a time. Action 1 is drawing 3 cards, and then your opponent picks 1, you get the remaining 2. It's tough. Your opponent's effectively choosing the cards more than you. Action 2 is split. You draw 4 cards, divide them into 2 piles, your opponent picks 1, you get the other one. Again, your opponent's picking stuff. It's hard. Action 3 is taking one of the cards in your hand and just putting it face down, and that will score secretly for you, and then finally action 4 is just discarding 2 cards. The back and forth and the core principle that your opponent is effectively choosing most of the cards that go on make deciding what cards to show them, what cards to hand them such a tense, enjoyable experience. And it does all that in about 10 to 20 minutes per game. Hanamikoji is an excellent game, and that is why it's my number 47. I'm going to have to come up with something different than saying, and that is why it's my number 46 every single time, because that is why Istanbul is my number 46. Istanbul. Istanbul is going to be showing up again in the future at some point when I do a list of top 10 games I was wrong about. And that's going to be, this is a terrible back of the box, doesn't show you anything. Let's go with the front, it's cooler. Istanbul is a game that I got rid of at one point. I played it a long time ago. I want to say long is relative. I want to say I played it roughly 3 years ago for the first time, got it to the table. I appreciated it. I thought it was fun, and I didn't feel the need to play it again. I got rid of it and moved on from it. But then, I don't know exactly why, I can't recall at all exactly why, but I got it back at some point, and I played it again, and other people at the table kind of liked it, and I was like, it's good, and then we played it again, it was good, and it was only when I really got the Mocha and Baksheesh expansion. I have both expansions in here. I've only played with the Mocha and Baksheesh expansion, but it's only when I got the Mocha and Baksheesh expansion that this went from being a good game that I was willing to play with other people who wanted to a game that I really enjoyed. It added that tiny extra degree of something that I was looking for in the game, and Istanbul, to be clear, base game Istanbul, is loved by many. For me, it was merely liked. And the core concept of Istanbul, one of the things I like a lot about it, is the variability. You're going to set up the various locations around the board, just randomly, with some degree of rules to keep it balanced or whatnot, but mostly randomly, and then from there you have to figure out the puzzle, because you're going to be moving around the board, but every time you move, you have to drop off one of your assistants. And then you can only take the action of a location if you drop off an assistant or pick up an assistant, which means at first, the world is your oyster. At first, you can do whatever you want, but one or two moves in, you realize that you are going to get stuck if you don't figure out how to backtrack as much as you are moving forward. It is a game of taking an action and retreating, so you can trigger and re-trigger the same locations and constantly have this little accordion of assistance that will let you spread to wherever you want and do whatever you want. It is an elegant puzzle that every single game, the configuration of the tiles will change how that puzzle plays out, which makes it hard to realize why I didn't love it when its initial base game alone, but I think it's because the puzzle was great, but after a play or two, it's just the core idea of what you're trying to do, of trying to earn rubies from the wagon, trying to earn rubies from the various power tiles. It felt a little bit too repetitive in the core things you were trying to do. Adding the Mocha and Baksheesh expansion mixed it up so that suddenly all the pathways are just a drop further out. It's a drop harder to figure out exactly what you want to do, how you want to achieve it, which upgrades and powers and abilities are going to be your muse for this game, your trigger, your pathway to victory in that particular game. I'm looking forward to playing Letters and Seals, which is the other expansion. I'm looking forward to whatever other content they eventually put out, although I haven't seen anything in a while, so maybe there is no other content they'll be putting out. But Istanbul has become one of my favorite gateway games, and that is why it's my number 46. Troyes, or Troyes as it's more accurately called, but I always insist on calling it both names, because if I say Troyes and no one knows that it's actually pronounced Troyes, then they're going to say, why aren't you calling it Troyes? So now I just give in to the masses. Then again, we've given in to the masses a long time ago, from the day we said literally actually means figuratively. So the masses have won in every battle, including this one, although the masses will not win in... I don't know, I couldn't cleverly figure out an end to that sentence. In Troyes, one of my favorite Euros. This is a game of rolling dice and taking actions. You are going to be rolling dice in this game, and then, well, earning more dice by putting out your workers in various locations to earn more dice, and or fighting the hordes of barbarians that are slowly encroaching. The dice are going to go into your central square, from which you can buy them from each other, which is a lot of fun, buying each other's dice and taking away that 6 that Jack has so clearly been trying to utilize in his various cards. And the cards in this game, the cards are why I like this puzzle so much. I have a thing for puzzles, I'm realizing, but nonetheless, the cards in this game are going to be different every single game. Each of the 3 sections, the yellow, the red, and the white, are going to have 3 different cards in them that unlock as each round progresses. So each round has another card being added until you play out 4 or 5 rounds, depending on player count. And those cards are going to present a puzzle of how you can utilize your dice. Perhaps you go heavy on yellow dice and you slowly cash them in for a monetary reward, or perhaps you're going more strongly towards the red dice, which can be helpful towards battle, although all the cards will have a different degree of overlap with each section, but they have their focus. And then finally, the white dice tend to be a little bit more either action, well, time-delayed actions and or victory point focused, and all of these 3 will configure in some sort of arrangement that you have to try to figure out, how do I optimally work these dice? How do I optimally earn my position on these cards and then turn those dice in for that, while managing to go back to the buildings to get more dice, but then every time I have a dice, I have to pay an upkeep for that die. How do I balance the puzzle that is Troyes? How do I balance all of that? And then I highly recommend, if you like this game, you absolutely must pick up the Ladies of Troyes, as well as the Troyes bonus cards, because they just add more cards in a game where the puzzle is all about how the cards combine. More cards can't possibly be a bad thing, right? And that is why Troyes is my number 45. I figure if I can't come up with something clever, I may as well embrace it. Speaking of which, El Grande Big Box. I gotta be careful about turning these boxes on their side. I'm going to regret it. All of these our sleeve. Now, so here's the good news. So far, Carson City, I have not played with any of the expansion material. Valeria Card Kingdoms, I've played with all of it. Istanbul, I've played with half of it. Troyes, I've played with most of it. El Grande Big Box, I have played with none of it. I have played with none of the big box material here. I have played exclusively with the base game, but oh, what a base game this is. El Grande is the granddaddy of area control for a reason. This is a game that has stood the test of time. I'm pretty sure 2005, if I'm not mistaken, and by the time I discovered it was probably 2014 or somewhere in that range, but from when I discovered it, it has not left my collection. It is a staple that comes out regularly every 3 to 6 months is regularly in my collection. But this game, it is, like I said, the granddaddy of area control. It is a game where you're slowly but surely going to be putting down your meeples, your grandes and your other meeples in various locations, and then every 3 rounds, this game lasts 9 rounds, and every 3 rounds there is a scoring round. So after the end of each 3 rounds, you're going to measure every single area on the board to see who earned the points for that. Then there's modifiers for having the most meeples in the king's location and or your own home area, so you can get extra bonus points for doing that. The cards of the game are going to be the crucial part of El Grande that makes it so immensely rewarding, because you're going to, first of all, you're going to have your own hand of 1 to 13. The number is 1 to 13. And when you play that, will earn your turn order every single round. So every single one of those 9 rounds, you're only going to play 9 of your 13 cards. You will effectively be determining when you're going to fight for that earlier turn order versus when you can add more meeples to your courtyard. So it's a balance of ensuring your resources are in alignment while also making sure you get the cool cards, because there are cool cards. There are going to be 5 rows of cards, each one of them with their own unique ability of how you manipulate the board state at any given time. Are you going to trigger an extra scoring, which, if you do it at the right time in the right situation, can be immensely impactful? Or alternatively, are you going to try to just load up a bunch of meeples somewhere else, or perhaps move the king and make sure you lock in your meeples first, because you can only ever place adjacent to the king's location and never in the king's location? It is a tense little puzzle. There's that thing again. It's a puzzle of how you manipulate the cards at any given point, knowing when to fight for a better card, knowing when you can play your 6 because it's okay, all the cards on the table are good, all of them are beneficial for you, and you definitely won't get blindsided by somebody else who figured out how to use a card in a different way that you totally didn't anticipate, and now you're regretting all your life choices, including why you ever got El Grande in the first place, which is probably because you watched this video and said, I never played that game, so let me get El Grande, and now we go back to that. And that is why El Grande is my number 44. My number 43 is going to be Marvel Champions. This one is the second one. This is going to be the second one on this list that is new to me. So 2 of my 12 new to me in 2020 games is going to be Marvel Champions. Again, a box that I should not be holding on its side, and a box that I should not be flipping over upside down while I show you the back. But Marvel Champions is the only LCG that I currently own. I have owned a variety of them over the years, and the most recent one that I got rid of would be Arkham Horror LCG. And I know, and I recognize, and I believe that Arkham Horror LCG is a better game than Marvel Champions LCG. The difference for me personally is that Marvel Champions has a theme that resonates with me more, and the one-shot play nature of it is far more accessible to me. LCGs, as they stand, LCGs, if you don't know, is a living card game. It's the idea that you're basically buying a collectible card game, but you're not actually buying a collectible card game because the packs are not random. You can buy exactly the packs you want, but they come out, or Fantasy Flight, as it were, comes out with packs every month or 2 or whatever it is. I don't know the exact cycle. And then they come out with larger packs, and they come out with the Rise of the Red Skull campaign expansion, which means they now do have a campaign, but they give you stuff you can do and add to this game. So it's hard enough to keep up with all the ever-increasing content in this game, and yet it's even harder to do that with an ongoing campaign. So for people who are really deep diving into these LCGs, I recommend checking out Arkham Horror LCG. I believe it's the better game of the 2 of them. It has a lot of core mechanisms in common, while giving you more of a rich experience, more of a rich narrative experience, and more things to do on the board. But Marvel Champions, on the other hand, I think is a better choice if you particularly like Marvel. I mean, I just got my Doctor Strange and Black Widow packs, and I have to break open those bad boys and sleeve them up and start rebuilding my decks. It has been a few months since I played this last. But I love the nature of building my deck every single time. I used to be a big Magic the Gathering player before I realized that it was either that or everything else, and I chose everything else. But I like that Marvel Champions aspect. I like that idea of crafting my Black Widow deck. I'll open it up, I'll take their predetermined deck, I'll take some cards out, put my own cards in, build a deck, and then I'll go up against, I don't know, Taskmaster. I don't remember who I have in this. I'll go up against Claw or whatnot and have a little battle and try to see who can win, who's going to come out on top in that battle. It's quick, it's accessible, a little bit of deck building. It gives me a lot of things I can do with it without being completely overwhelming in the actual experience it provides. I really enjoy Marvel Champions. I do recommend it as a solo experience far more than I recommend it as a, definitely not 3 or 4. Absolutely do not play this game 3 or 4. That is nothing will kill this game faster for you. I think it's okay at 2. It's decent at 2, but really in this game, there's too much number crunching going on in your head. There's too much, well, if I add this card and I add that card, it's going to be +2, -2 against that villain. It's a lot of math going on. Simple math, easy to follow, easy to track, but it's not really that fun to be sitting next to someone else while you both do math. On the other hand, it is immensely fun to do math on your own. That's called homework, or otherwise known as Marvel Champions, and that sounds like a good time to tell you that that is why it's my number 43. Number 42 is Quest for El Dorado. And this is one of those things about these lists that's actually pretty hard to do, because you see, when I look at these games, sometimes I look at them and I'm like, you know what, maybe Marvel Champions I like more than Quest for El Dorado, but what goes into my decision is a little more complex than that. You see, Quest for El Dorado is the game that regularly hits the table, and accessibility is a part of my decision making. Circle the Wagons, there are so many games that were under this. Dogs of War, which is a game that was in my top 20 last year, made its way to below Circle the Wagons, and I don't for a second believe that Circle the Wagons is a better game than Dogs of War, but I'm not playing Dogs of War right now, and I haven't played Dogs of War in over a year. COVID has something to do with that, but nonetheless, and so when I look at the games on my shelf, if I had to choose whether to keep Circle the Wagon or Dogs of War right now, I'd probably keep Circle the Wagons, although after COVID I'd get back Dogs of War and redo this list. So yes, so I think I actually like Marvel Champions better than Quest for El Dorado, but like I said, to me, it's more of a package deal of why I picked any given game, but that's enough of a distraction. Quest for El Dorado. Why is this game my number 42? Quest for El Dorado is a game by Reina Knizia that has deck building, is light, accessible, easy to teach. If you know deck building, this game is, well, like I said, easy to teach. It's same deck building as anything else, but this is deck building with a race. People were for a while all obsessed with the idea of, ooh, deck building with a board. Trains came out, was the hit of everything. People don't talk about Trains anymore. It's sad, really, but it was a good game. It is a good game. I used to like it. I used to own it. I no longer own Trains. But Quest for El Dorado is deck building with a board because you are racing along that board. You are building a deck as you try to traverse the jungle, making your way to the mythical temple of El Dorado. It has enough basic cards of how to move through the jungle and the various different terrain types, and enough cool and interesting cards that you're like, ooh, am I going to weed my deck? Ooh, I'll get the native. I can just go across anything. Ooh, I'll get the captain. I can move 3 water. That's so cool. Look at that water section coming up. It's got typical deck building. It also has an expansion in here that I haven't played. So if we're doing the expansion game, I've played a bunch of the expansions of Marvel Champions, not all of them. I have not played the expansion for Quest for El Dorado. So honestly, I'm doing pretty good, all things considered here. Quest for El Dorado, though, has the expansion in it, which I haven't played, like I said, and you are moving across the board, racing each other to get to the end. I like this particularly at 3 or 4. At 2, I don't like it as much. I find that there's more of a social element going on at 3 or 4 players, but still good at 2, especially because you get 2 racers each, but it takes, as a side point, it's a side tangent as to why I don't like 2 quite as much, but many people, in fact, I think BGG may even have this rated as best with 2, I don't recall exactly. For myself, I prefer it at 3 and 4 players. I like the interplay of blocking each other on a frequent, repeated basis, getting in each other's way, knowing when you can stall at a central pivot point and continue to build your deck while other people are behind you frustrated, because when people are frustrated in games, that's usually why they like playing them again, right? That is how it works, isn't it? No? No, I mean, my gaming group is down to 5 people, but that's COVID. It's nothing to do with my choices in games. In any case, Quest for El Dorado is a great game that you should get your hands on. It is light. It is easy to teach. It has deck building. It is cheap. You can generally pick this thing up for like $20 on Amazon or whatever. It is a solid game. I'm not going to say it. Concordia. Concordia is my number 41. This is another one that has shown up on previous lists. In fact, Concordia and Chua, I believe, possibly even Istanbul, I don't remember all the time. I think those were in my top 10 Euro games, so there's going to be some overlap there. Concordia is a game that I have basically all the expansion maps and haven't played with a single one of them, so you can take that as a strike against me in the expansion category, but Concordia is oh so good. Something about this game has me ranking it lower than I otherwise would. I don't know exactly what that is, but what I mean by that is Concordia, even though it's my number 41, I think that as a game, it should be higher. This is an incredible experience. This is basically Catan if Catan were better, if Catan were more, I don't know, strategic or whatever it is. It has a lot of the same elements, the core resources that you're working with, the slowly building yourself up over the map, lots of accessibility. I think it probably wouldn't have the success of Catan because it's not as accessible. It doesn't have the simple charm of rolling dice and taking resources. There's a lot more strategy going on in this game, a lot more looking at the map and saying, well, to perfectly optimize my end game, I have to do this so that when I do that, it'll be twice as powerful, so that when I do that, it'll be 3 times as powerful. But wait. I could instead do this first, which will let me do that, and then that, because there's cascading benefit of being able to get the resources you need and take cascadingly more powerful actions as you do so. But there's so many different triggers to which step you're going to take first. Which thing are you going to do first in order to build up that better, faster, more rewarding engine? Along the way, you're going to constantly be gathering cards that will let you do more stuff, but will also be the way you score points in the game. At the end of the day, all the cards that you get will add to your scoring multipliers in different ways. It will be you score times this, you score times that. So ideally, you build up the perfect set of cards that rewards you for the things you are already doing in this game. Concordia is my favorite game by Matt Gertz, which I guess inherently means no more Matt Gertz will be showing. There may be another Matt Gertz showing up on this list. I don't recall. There might be one more. I have to take a look. But in any case, Concordia is my favorite game by Matt Gertz, probably. And it is an excellent, excellent game. And that is why I'm going to do it. That is why it's my number 41. This is my list from 50 through 41. Like I said, we have 2 of my new-to-me games in 2020 on this list. We have none of my 15 Kickstarter games on my list. And we have none of the 4 games that came out in 2020 on this list. But that was 50 through 41. Stay tuned for, I imagine, next week, but I don't know exactly when, as I start to go through my 40 through 31. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me which of these is your favorite game, and which of these... I mean, I'd say which of these am I totally wrong about, but I mean, you could do that too. I don't know. Maybe Trois is terrible. Maybe Circle the Wagons just shouldn't be on the list at all. Maybe it's a sin that I put 40 games before Concordia. You pick. You decide what thing in life in general that I am the most wrong about, and then let me know in the comments down below because, well, that's what I thought of doing at the end of this video, and it's too late to go back now because I don't edit. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's too much of a stress. It didn't sound good. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good one.